mama coming to town in your studio? All right, I think we can start. Welcome, everyone, to the first ever episode of the Annoying Artist podcast. My name is Rukia. I for sure do not know where this is going, but we're just going to sit here and talk about art and life.
Thank God.
Fun fact for everyone, Ijaka and I went to the same school a long time ago in Nairobi, and I think I was in that school for 1 year, but I do remember Ijaka being very focused in art class. I mean, for most of us, art class was a way to forget about math class, but it has been years, man, and we've been catching up in the last few days before this podcast about what's happened since we said goodbye. One of the most interesting topics being your experience at KU and all the things that went down there. I mean, I just want to dive right in. A collective effort that you were involved in was able to influence the passing of a bill. I think it's safe to say that I want to start with that story.
Where do we begin this story? That was the beginning of my second year in KU, and I was joining it's called the Jandaria Business Incubation Center.
Mm-hmm.
So on the very top of the Jandaria Business Center is Yali. Yali basically runs the whole of the top floor. But Yali didn't exist before 2015, and I was there since towards the end of 2014. I got to school and I started feeling like, especially because a lot of us were exposed to Western schools very early. If you remember, we used to have these fairs in school where like a lot of schools would come to pitch to us where you would want to go to university and that sort of thing. So you already by when we were pretty young had a pretty high standard of what your tertiary education was going to look like. You know, you were being classed with those kind of institutions. So not to make much of a comment on the bearing of Kenyatta University as an institution, but as the art program, like I think I had enough insight to make a critical conclusion that I wasn't getting what I would call is even nearly a good tertiary art education. So I went to my first year and felt like it was okay. And then, and most first years are like that. Most first years are introductory. You're being introduced into what is going to be the next 3 years of it. You can't really, most institutions, you are going through the same sort of first year, so it's excusable. Then my second year, when I now started making really real judgments, like, no, I don't think this, I can't waste, I feel like I'm going to waste this time. And so at that point was when an organization funded by one of these larger missionary movements or organizations, like it's a church movement, like a Franciscan sort of. Anyway, it's one of those sort of organizations, and it was sponsoring the reintroduction of creative subjects into curriculum. So it wasn't exactly target art, music, craft that there is supposed to be. First off, legally as like almost like a right is supposed to be given to these young people. So how do we get into making some change there? The only way is through legislation, right? And legislation at the parliament level, as far as Kenya is concerned, it had to go get tabled as a bill that then gets voted on, and then now implementation happens afterwards. We did it was about several months of what actually was happening is, or where I came in was I was teaching final year students, so that's class 8, who are about to sit the final year exams, but that this could be compared off of a study that was not, it was rather compared off of results of previous leavers. The idea is you teach this subject rather than whatever it used to be, the period used to be used for before, and then now compare results. Are you going to see a reduction in what these people deem critical subjects when these guys are examined? That sort of question, especially because art itself was not going to be examined. So they were like, does this waste time? There was a large team surrounding this whole thing. So I can't say that I was part of the whole process. There's like the collection of all our information through the different institutions, and then the drafting of the bill after that was done by other people. But that was my part in the process. And to summarize, it was passed. That was in 2017. And I think these things are usually available online, these bills. When they pass in Parliament, you can get them off of the Government of Kenya something website. So it's really something to be proud about. The only thing now is that enforcing has to happen. So you pass a bill, that's very nice, but implementation and enforcing are things that have to happen on the ground. You literally have to go school by school, making sure is your period being used, because it's something about accountability. Institutions themselves have to come out, and like the headmaster, for instance, has to come up and decide that in this school resources, because that's the general conversation. The whole reason people didn't want to do it is because an art class takes a lot of resources, and those resources could be diverted to other things. So in terms of money, like, are we going to use this money in investing in what is supposed to be the creative class? Or so there's a lot of conversations about accountability. I've only followed up because I have a number of family members who work in institutions, like in the form of one of my aunties is a headmistress, and then I have a cousin who's a teacher at the local school, the local public school system level. So he has other schools who he can. So I formed a small sort of network of accountability. Like, is it being taught in your school? And is it being taught in your friend's school? And is it? So at a small level, I get that it's happening. But I've never really taken time to follow up on what the end result, or did it really become a thing? And then, we went through a lot of change recently because our whole education system was revamped. We have a new education system currently. It's a terrible system, if I would say so, but like that's a whole conversation in itself. And that's a whole conversation in itself. We'll have that conversation another time. That happened, and when after I did that, that is prior to now really starting that was before I began my second year, I think. So it was now in my first year, or my first semester of the second year, that I determined I'm not doing this anymore. I took what do you call it? I took in KU there's a name for it. You just pause it. So anyway, I did it so many times I'm laughing because I forget the term. And then I ended up with a friend. He actually was the one who managed to get the space at the business center, and we came up with this idea we were going to make a studio and try and model it into some sort of a business so that we would have space to work. That was like the whole concept. I don't even know how we pitched it, but we got the space, we got the resources, and so like that whole year of 2015 was spent working in that space. It became a real pain because of the way they wanted it to run like a business. They were very, very much they were trying to run it in a way that it couldn't work. It was becoming too much of a commercial enterprise when we were trying to be contemporary artists. It just was not working. So, but while we were there, we made very, very strong networks, and we met very interesting people and showed work in very interesting spaces. It was just a year when I got to spread the work that I was doing at that time and really get it out. And the fact that I think that I'm an artist. A lot of people, for some reason, now thought like it automatically related to success, but they didn't understand that it had a system behind it. There was something working behind it. It wasn't just freestyle, But that was how I ended up at. That was the story. And so the fact that I think it was really interesting for a lot of people who visited the business center to find us as artists there, because mostly you go in there with a suit and tie mentality, and you're really expecting to find innovative ideas with that sort of concept, entrepreneurial, innovative ideas. I don't think anyone ever expects to see artists when those words come up. So it was always like, oh, wow, okay. And then like we were the bohemians in the house, so you could always come chill with us and have your your shady stories after you were done with the like serious business meeting thingies that you were done doing. And Yali produced very interesting characters, like young, very interesting young leaders show up at Yali from across Africa. So you make very interesting networks. People who I still like connect with today, literally across Africa. Guys from Ghana, West Africa, and actually very friendly people who also, partly because some individuals would come from Nigeria, and I have a history with Nigeria, so we had very good relationships with people who passed through Yali.
What's your history with Nigeria?
Um, when I was 8 years old, we moved to Nigeria. That was around 2001. So it's been an on and off experience. I feel like I grew up there. We were there the first time for like 4 years, and then did another 2 years later on. But I have a very intimate relationship with that country, especially because for me, I feel like when it comes to art, that age, when you're around 8 years old, is like a very critical age. It's even scientifically, psychologists or scientists who work with that sort of thing believe that around 8 is the age when it's break when it comes to creativity. So for me, being in Nigeria at that time was very, very vital because for one, I was getting so much visual stimuli. Like there were so many things I'd never seen in my life before that I saw in West. That was the first place in West Africa I'd ever visited. And West Africa it just has a unique look to it for someone who's never been to that part of Africa, and a unique way that life happens. Also was the fact that growing up comfortable as we did, I had access to a lot of the sort of visual stimuli that I wanted or that I needed to access. So it was a time when, since we move around a lot, you don't maybe form strong relationships initially. I had a lot of time to do a lot and enjoying my own sort of stuff. And so I was surrounded by a lot of that, and the only way to regurgitate was to draw or to work, to make something off of the things that I had on me. So like even till today, I keep a lot of my sketchbooks from literally over 15 years ago. I have a lot of visual content that I have from when I was young, and I think it's like vital to telling the story of the artist that's creating today. So that's my my connection with Nigeria.
I know that you and I talked a little bit about like you being an artist when you first started practicing, and that was when you were with Patrick.
A lot of people have their ideas about what the period that you call your begin practicing. So I think the normal way of thinking around it is that when you've completed tertiary education, like university or whatever, then now from that period you've officially started saying. My practice began when I first started showing to the public. That's what I call the beginning of my practice. And that generally begins when I joined the studio with Kabi when he was at the Go Down, not the Dust Depot. And that was around 2012, right? So for me, it was just when I had completed my IB, and then now that's the period before joining university. But instead, I went to do what we call the Atelier method, mentoring and Patrick. And I feel like that space had a very strong influence on my early practice and has a very strong influence on a lot of young practicing artists in Nairobi right now, and many other artists. They go down as the art center that it was, as the space, because of the various sort of creative minds that are very influential. So for a lot of us, it grew us in that way. And I was there for just a couple of years, because also those were the final years of the Go Down, which closed officially last year, 2019. But that process began around 2015, of pushing artists out, of starting to close certain functions. And so that was the period when Patrick moved to the Dust Depot, located at Railways Museum, and I was no longer practicing with those guys at that point. But like the point being that the art center had a strong influence on. But the politics around that time, I actually want to talk about that. I don't know. I very strongly feel like a lot of people have their ideas on what it means to be an artist, and I think for some of us who do it as a way of living, as a lifestyle, you're just an artist by your lifeline. Like you live that sort of life. You get like a critical view of what it means to be an artist, and so you cannot create for yourself. You can't really be making things that you are making sort of for your own personal. It's like more so what conversations are you trying to have, and really how you engage in the public. This thing that you're making is for other people. It's not just for you. So I don't know if I made this distinction on record. If we had this conversation on recording where I was trying to say that people have to make that conviction. You are the visual artist. Did we had that?
Yes, but you can say it again because it was awesome.
Oh man. So yes, I have very strong views on what you call yourself, what you choose to title yourself, and when you call yourself an artist, what exactly are you? What sort of artist are you? And just sort of respecting the discipline, because it's like it's just about, I feel like if I take my practice very far, I'd like it that those people who look up to my work and maybe look towards it for direction or whatever, also respect the fact that I put in a lot of work into becoming that specific thing. So if it's a very, very good painter and you really like the paintings, it's like, what did he go to, like, what lengths did he go to get to this level of skill in painting, So that's why I think it's important to be very categorically clear about what it is that you do. So that it helps, like, those people who look towards, like, for me, when I look towards the people who I think inspire me, it's usually very clear. I know what this person was doing, what led to them doing that sort of thing, what inspired them, what moved them. So it really helps. It really helps to sort of have a clear view of what your practice exactly is.
There was a point that you had made about how Patrick wasn't trying to make other Patricks.
I like the way that he did his version of mentoring. I think it is easy because I've also begun instructing people, young people, let me be more specific. I think it's easy for someone who you are teaching to fall in line into what you're doing, because in essence they are copying. You tell the person, draw it this way, and you're doing the right thing. So the person will draw it that way, and so slowly they will start doing things the way that you do things, So it takes investing into an individual to know that this person's strengths and interests and the things they like are this and that and the other, and then now building upon that, than just saying, because I mean, like me now, knowing that I'm so good at doing illustration in 1, 2, 3 way, I teach you how to do it in the 1, 2, 3 way, because I know that's like ABCs for me. Rather than getting to really know that you have an interest in a certain direct. So that, like with Patrick, of where are you coming from? What do you bring to the table? What is it about you? And then from there, you sort of have the freedom to explore and become yourself. So that sort of opens very, very good. You would expect people to be strict. I think a lot of us come into it thinking there's going to be a school-like relationship, where if you're not achieving certain results, you will either get kicked out of the studio or you won't be able to. But it wasn't like that. It was like you would take risks, you would do a new sort of thing. You were apparently an acrylic painter, then all of a sudden you go do this oil painting, and it wouldn't be looked down upon or frowned upon, unlike a lot of us, and opened our minds to be more of independent creatives rather than looking like Mukabi copycats.
You're right. Having met him once for a very short time, I always hoped that there would be another time where we could just sit down and gather all the information, all the wisdom. What he has done with Dust Depot is incredible. Quick question though. I want people to know more about your art. What happened to the commission that you were supposed to sell today?
Yeah, okay, well, I mean, basically it was just some commissions off of some guy who had seen my work, I think on social media. And very fortunate timing, because I needed those commissions to come through. They're very much going to help with my practice and with my own personal stuff. I hope you have a way to share images. That would be very interesting, yeah? If you can also share images besides the podcast and what people are going to be hearing. Either way, the work is image transfer on canvas.
Okay.
The content is, or rather the theme of the work is based off of the city. I picked up works that to me seemed like they spoke about the current, the way the city is reacting to the current situation, the lockdown thanks to COVID and that kind of a situation. Those are the images that I was really looking to do for him, because he had seen other work. He had seen other work, and then now based off of the other work he saw, he was like, "Can you offer me new ideas?" And so the images of the work that I've just done to me are a symbol of a new way of being, the lockdown situation. I'm really trying to incite myself. Like, so when I move around, I'm really trying to find things that make me, that, I don't know how to put it, like that, that tickle that thing that makes me very interested in working, right? Like today, for instance, on my commute, I saw I was watching the way corruption has adapted to COVID times. It's very interesting, actually. So like the way the cops are used to taking bribes from the matatu process has changed. So it was very fun to watch. I'm like, wow, everything is adapting to COVID, even corruption. So like that's something that I might think of doing work on.
How has it
changed? It's very hard to get any sort of content. You'll see in the work.
Okay.
Like it's a whole story.
Okay.
Dude, it's so funny. For instance, now, these cops here, they're wearing face masks. And to me, that's like a whole new level of, that's taking it to another level. This is like masked thieves, literally. It's like now we're dealing with, the way you have a terrorist depicted to you is an individual who's masked and who is, it doesn't have to be the actual militant terrorist that we know of. You know, it can even be a person in a suit. It's just something, a face that you can't see and is doing bad things to you is a terrorist. So like now the cops have masks, and you know, generally the way it's thought about in like justice circles, for instance, is that the way to fight this vice is because you can see a person's face. So for instance, when you're reporting to the commission, the Anti-Corruption Commission, about incidences that you see, you're supposed to be able to describe the person you saw committing the crime. Because that way it makes it much easier to bust at a police station based off of a description of what they look like, yeah? So now they have masks. So you can't, like, it defeats the purpose. You literally can't even see who it is that is you want to make a report on. They've become like the next level thieves. So I don't know, I was thinking around it and I'm like, I'm going to do some work around like the way they must be so happy. They must be so excited they can do their shit without like any oversight now.
But it's an interesting take, you're right. I never thought of it that way, actually. I was also kind of worried. I was in a supermarket at some point and everyone was wearing masks and I was like, how do you know who is a thug and who's just a normal person protecting themselves? Because also not everyone is wearing the recommended ones, like the hospital ones. People are just like making their own, like all black, all like pimped out.
Yeah.
And so I'm like,
There's also a lot to say about those fake masks that people are wearing. I mean, I'm like, honestly, do you understand the purpose of a mask? Some people wear masks that don't cover the nose, it just covers the mouth. I'm like, do you want us to see your nose? There's some very funny conversations that are coming out of this, like having to adapt to what a virus of this nature means, you know, like the whole covering thing is so funny because now we all understand what it feels like to wear a burqa and have to walk around town, have to walk around a crowded place.
Yep.
We feel you now, we get it.
And I remember when was it Juicy or Jana, when I was taking photos, because I was just so excited. After I...
Oh, you were so awesome.
Thank you. We'll talk more about that. But I also felt I had my phone here like this, and then I can just click with the volume button. So I'm like, what's that, Kumpe? I've done like this, and I'm taking... I felt like a super spy. Have you looked at them and thought of ideas about what you're going to use them for?
Yeah, quite a lot actually. Now, I've been working I have this very strong politics around my work.
Yeah.
The reason I shoot on photography and everything is because I have it's many conversations, but it's mainly surrounding issues of copyright, of course, issues of ownership, like how much do you own something that you maybe take off of the public domain. You understand the way like the photos that are offered freely to use, but like I usually wonder how much of it is my work once use someone else's content. And so I'm going to use your photos so hard.
Yeah, that's good.
Awesome.
I can't wait to see.
I was asking about myself about that politics. I was like, honestly, I feel like I could offer your photos up for an exhibition like they were my work.
I mean,
without shame.
No, that's fine. I was just walking around taking photos. I really can't take too much credit on it because I think you'll do the work on it.
Gold. That content is gold, imagine. Like those things, to me, I found that there's everything is important content. Like you literally can't waste anything. Even when it looks like a sketch, it's literally so valuable. Mm-hmm. I sometimes use things from several years ago. It's even funny. I'm like, I can't believe I thought to take this thing all those years ago and now it's working. So it's like your videos.
Yeah.
When you were shooting the video with the dog, how long ago was that?
Oh, so these are the other ones. That was, I think that was 2017. Those many years ago. Yeah, I was just at home and I didn't know what I was gonna use them for. And honestly, I was just about to delete them from my drive because.
What was the idea behind the whole why record? Why?
I think it was just a little bit of narcissism. I was like, I think I'm a genius. I think I should just record myself doing random things. But it just ended up clogging up my
It's not vain at all. It's self-archiving. It works.
Right.
Let's call it self-archiving.
Right. I mean, I recorded myself brushing my teeth. And then I saved that for some reason. And I'm like, why? Sometimes I look back and I'm like, why did I do this? Oh, maybe because it's in black and white, it might be artistic. But it's not. It's just me brushing my teeth. Nonsense. But I'm liking the fact that you have found some use for it. I don't know.
I'm going to have very interesting things because it's weird. It's like how I've had a number of artists speak about the way they think through creation and how they think through making things. And there's this idea around the birth of an idea in your mind, and then somehow it doesn't stop, it just halts somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then through experiencing the world, the various ideas then get to grow, quote unquote. So they're like the ideas I know I've had several years ago, and then they just sort of pause, and then you keep getting content every other day, maybe from people or just through experiencing life, and then these ideas. So like with yours, I don't know, there was but I don't know if I should say it here because then I kill that. No, I'm not going to say it on the podcast.
Okay.
I'm going to do the work first so I don't get it.
Okay.
Importantly, I have to say that there was a time when I was asking people for a lot of their source material when I just started really taking videography seriously.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you check on my Instagram page, that begins when I did this piece, this video piece that has guys working. It looks like people are working on the top of a skyscape. So the idea behind it was the same way you would have collage, right? You tear from a fixed body of something to create a new body of something. I was taking source material from very, very many different sources to tell just one story. You put them together in compositing, in video, in After Effects to tell one story. That was like the concept behind it. So I'm like thinking of how to cut out from your videos aspects of yourself and then impose that to other media and see what sort of collage-like effects come out of that. And I think it will be very interesting.
Do you credit them as the photographer?
No, I feel strongly about crediting people in recent years for everything that they do. I really think it's important, and I think that it's something to be embraced. There's a culture I'm going to speak loosely and say in Africa, but I can speak very, very well for Kenya.
Mm-hmm.
That is a capitalistic culture that kills movements, right? So artists don't want to move in movements because of holding on to your market. And I think it's a very silly idea. They destroy this ecosystem of ours, right? So me, I personally, I work against it. I really believe in sharing, in collaborating in that sort of way. The fact that I saw something that Rukia did, it doesn't matter whether Rukia is actually a photographer or did it as an amateur or did it for fun or whatever it is. The fact is it came through you. So one way or the other, you are part of the conversation. And it makes things interesting when there's a conversation. It's not like honestly, you're not a god. You can't be the beginning and end of everything. So I saw the image, I made the work, I made the concept, I came up with the thought process, I did the whatever. I'm like, damn, bro. It's why I feel, and strongly that other conversation, the one about movements, it bothers me very strongly that artists don't have the openness of mind to not be afraid to work together or to look like they work together. I think that's where the belief in crediting comes from.
Is it more, when you're speaking in Kenya, is it more is there like a certain type of artists who lean towards that kind of thinking? Is it like more musicians, more visual artists, people more like, in which world have you seen this?
I can only speak for the visual arts. I can't say for music, but I can speak for because I'm very, very, very well versed with the visual arts for a long time now. I can definitely say it's a conversation that's actually openly spoken about. It's something that a group of us openly speak up against. I'm very much for artists creating in tandem, because if you're a critical individual, you know what a unique idea looks like. A unique idea does not look like two things that look the same. You understand? If I give you a pencil and Rukia gives you a pencil, like, we both have a different idea behind that pencil, if we want to call it a sculpture. So it's like, let's not be silly about it and say Rukia is trying to steal my pencil market, but like, what is it that's the critical idea behind the work that you're giving me? So it opens up a lot of conversations. Also, it opens up the conversation that is uneducatedness and a sense of not many educated individuals in the practicing. And by educated, I mean critical enough to do what I call critical thought, basically. People who can think very hard behind the maybe figurative or physical aspects of the work, the thing itself. So you have the thing, but then what else? You know? That is the thing that makes Masai market work what Masai market work is. You know? It is just the object, really. So what else lies behind this object? So many conversations, man. Now, if you ask me a question, I feel like I'm trailing off. That was on the record, by the way. All that was on the record. Thank God.
It's funny that you did the cross. I thought you weren't religious.
Oh my God, it's called hypocrisy, Rukia. Take us slowly, man. We're unlearning.
Yeah.
We're unlearning our prejudice.
It's true. Were you ever religious at some point?
Yeah, very much so, like, weren't we all? But then now I'm questioning a lot of what that was also, you know. You have so many people you Skype chat with. Oh my goodness. I have like only 2 or 3 people. I've seen your whole list.
How do you know? Wait, did they show you my list?
Yeah, you showed me your whole screen for a second.
What? Okay, I'll stop playing with this mouse.
Okay, I can see like you have a pattern with IT. It's not really working in your favor. I'm saying, like, I was initially, like, we are all, I had that challenging my place and who am I and all that sort of, you know, religious whatever lens. But then again, I don't know. We never grew up in a really religious household as such. It was very much theatrical in our home. It was like playing a part. A family has to go to church, that sort of thing. And then also, you know, it was also veiled in like having to move from state to state, from country to country. And then there's this idea of a church being a home. So like you build a church, you stay in a church for a couple of years, it becomes your church sort of thing. So my folks also sometimes felt like it was too much work starting off in a new institution, in a new church. So we really just didn't do it. And so for that, in our household, it was not something that you had to even think about, like, am I being religious? It was your own personal conversation, you know, as far as that is concerned. There was a time, all my religious interest, I think, has surrounded art. So there was a time I was very much interested in reading about Western art, right? And Western art beginning from the period that is the Renaissance. And if you read very well about the Renaissance, that means there's no way you're going to miss religion's impact on that period of art, right? Because they were pretty much the commissioners of the day. So a lot of my it's such a long conversation. There was a time I went through a whole esoteric period where all I was reading was about the Kabbalah and what is it called, Baphomet and all of that. Like, I've gone through so many of these phases. These days I just laugh about it. But
what changed?
I question. What do you mean? What changed?
Well, what made you not do that anymore? Why was it on your face?
Oh, because I think right now I've reached a climatic phase in that conversation where I what would you call it? Like, I don't even know how to put it and be very kind about it. Like, I'm living life a day at a time and not letting the wider bullshit affect me. So the wider bullshit, what I call that is man-made constructs. So things that I feel like anything that was a man-made institution or a man-made imposed, or a man told me that I should do this, or a man has me thinking in that way, I have a very critical view of them. I put them aside and like, I really take my time to mull that over. And I'm like, if you ask me about it, I'm like, I'm still thinking about it. Give me time. So it's a conversation so I'm just living at a time and really not, even because there was a few years ago, my main conversation was spirituality. Now saying it's not about religion anymore. Now it's just about being a spiritual being. But now I'm like, I'm like, no, bro, it's just about getting till tomorrow. It's about getting to tomorrow and being a good person at it while you're doing that. So I have this very critical conversation going on in my mind right now about man-made constructs. When you think about it, all these things that a man or a group of men sat down to decide that other men should do, men being a collective term for human beings, is just some bullshit. I'm like, why? Who makes you think you could sit down and like determine what gives you that amount of power? That's so much power, man. To sit down as a few to determine for the whole. No, I don't think so. So I'm being very critical. The religion conversation is already out of the door for me, man. Oh my goodness, a long time ago. I read about the Council of Nicaea a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. You've read about the Council of Nicaea, the one that comes together to form the Council of Trent? No. Rukia, are you religious?
No. I think I stopped being religious at like 14.
I won't break your heart then. So like the people who are listening to this will probably go in and maybe they've read about it or read in themselves. But there's a Council of Trent, which is a group of men again who come together to review, and I'm going to be as honest and critical as I can here, to review biblical literature of the time, and that was pre the King James period, when we have those Bible versions called King James Bible version or whatever, pre that period. So this group of people come together and determine like we don't think these books need to be read, and we think these books need to be read, and we think this is too much for the Christian populace. And I'm like, what gave you the power to determine what the masses should receive as far as this biblical literature? You should have given individuals everything and allowed critical thought to take place. Like, let someone determine that actually I don't believe in the shit I'm reading here, or yeah, this makes a lot of sense to me. To sort of try to script it into a storyline, to me, was where already religion got cut at the neck. Like, there is where they blundered the biggest. Then on top of that is the institution's lack of credibility. So over so many years, things were not rolled back. Like, why wasn't whatever they're called, the papal, it's called what, the papal library or something, the library with a lot of important texts related to Christianity that's in the Vatican. It's not a public resource. It's a space that only maybe highly trained theological professors can access. I'm like, why? This religion claims to be the religion of the people. And so I have many questions around not just Christianity, but a lot of institution where you're just being told that it works this way, So, I mean, it's that sort of conversations that, and then I think about them and I'm like, you get so anxious starting to think about it that at some point I'm like, man, I think I'm just going to go to bed and wake up tomorrow and be a good person to all the people around me, and then go to sleep and wake up the next day and do that until like my body is done with living this life. Because you decide to tackle the wider conversation, it becomes a bit tricky, you know.
It's a good point.
That's just
I do remember, from what I remember from high school when we were together, you were very nice. You were a tall, kind person, and so I'm glad to hear that that's been your motto since then, and you haven't changed. But I mean, I didn't go to the in-depth sort of in books and read all this stuff. For me, I was praying 5 times a day at some point. I was very obsessed with being Muslim. I was very obsessed with Arabic, and I was very obsessed with all the girls who look really nice in hijabs. I just thought it was a very beautiful thing to be a part of. And I even remember I think this was Uganda. Yeah, I think actually it was after I left Braeside, and I just started being really into it. For me, it was very beautiful. I don't know how I can say it, but for me, I just found it very beautiful and loving how, like, you'd slaughter a cow during Eid and you give all your neighbors, and men will kind of like gather around.
It's like a very beautiful culture. I agree.
Yeah, and you would really fast in solidarity, and when you're breaking the fast, it's all this loving food, and people are just talking, and I just kind of saw people come together during like Ramadan and Eid. And I remember going to my brother and asking him to teach me how to pray, and he taught me how to pray. And I remember asking my dad to buy me the mats, the really cool, beautiful mats. Mine was blue with the dira, so it's like the compass that shows you where Mecca is, where you need to face. And I just remember really loving that, and I couldn't wait to pray. It was just such a nice little routine that I made for myself. And then I don't know what happened. I think for a while I just started forgetting to pray. I mean, that was the first thing that happened. I just started, I don't know, being lost in books and hanging out with friends and speaking to people, having crushes, growing up, and then kind of forgetting to pray. Somewhere along the way I just started questioning, and of course the moving around countries and schools and cities and homes and different neighbors, different cliques, different groups of people, all made me question why there was a necessity to have such a routine. It made me start examining other people's teachings, because I was also in a Catholic school for 3 years, and things were just similar. You know, I go home, they're talking about the same thing, and in school they were talking about the same thing, and I didn't know why the two groups didn't trust one another, in that sense of like people are nice to each other outside the context of religion. Like, people are neighbors, people give you services in the hospital, people teach Muslim kids even though you're Christian, people greet you, you accept, life goes on outside that context. And then when it's these days to be religious, it was very secluded and very completely forgot that kindness that you had practiced to just fellow human beings, not just your religious people, throughout the week.
Yep.
So for me, I was like, I don't know why we have to be hypocrites on Friday and Sunday. Like, I don't know why are we doing this? Let's just continue how we were on Wednesday and Thursday. And then for me, later on, at 20, 21, going off to university and experiencing things and talking to people, talking to different people who are in even more groups or religious practices, like Seventh-day Adventists and Shias instead of Sunnis, and going, why? I mean, ultimately it's just the same belief. There's something or someone we won't see until we die that's created us. That's kind of what they're saying. And then there's all these stories around that. But then I was just asking myself, if that's what we ultimately all believe, why all these other different stories? Because for me, I thought the teachings are the same, but people are trying to they formed their religious groups based on them or their leaders before them concentrating on a section of that thing that is so-called, like the one thing that is common. Maybe some people concentrate too much on like God created for 7 days for 6 days and then rested on the seventh. And then the Seventh-day Adventists kind of heavily rely on, they do that. And then the people who really strongly believe in Jesus, and then Muslims, he's kind of just another prophet, believe in another. People kind of just like dissected this book and they're like, you know what, this is what fits us, this 3-4 pages. They'll be taken by other people. And then it just became that. I think they were really cool stories. I think there are triumphant stories. They teach you. Yeah.
It's crazy. Exactly. It's a policing tool, you know. Mm-hmm. It's very unfortunate, and it opens up the space for a lot of conversations. But I think centered around power, man. Mm-hmm. People just chasing power and trying to find whatever way they can use. Because, like when you were talking about your love for the Muslim religion previously, all I heard you talking about is your passion for the beauty of culture. That's what you really were saying, you know. And that's where religion got stabbed in the back. You know, religion was this beautiful thing. From the beginning has been a beautiful thing. Like every other institution, it's just a thing. Mm-hmm. But a beautiful one from the very beginning that just got corrupted. Mm-hmm. Guys just decided, no, this thing, by the way, can get me a lot of power. If I just tell people that they just go this way with me because there's a higher purpose behind it, mm-hmm. they'll do it. So it just fucks everything up. Now I'm like, oh my goodness, you've gone and ruined what was truly a perfect thing, mm-hmm. you know? Mm-hmm. A lot of us like went through, I know a lot of myself and a lot of my friends who grew up around me went through what I call our Muslim phase, like where we really wanted to be Muslims.
Oh.
Like myself also, because I felt I had started critiquing already Christianity and its loopholes, you know, don't kill, and then it went and killed all those people during the Templar period. Mm-hmm. Don't, you know, like very silly things. And I was like, you know, but Muslim religion seems to me to be a lot more open and a lot more about like the reality of life. It has the grittiness of what it really means to live life. You know, the ideas of like concepts like where if you killed someone, for instance, mm-hmm. and then the family would have to take either a life or take, a compensation in kind for the life, right? Mm-hmm. I think what that tries to say to me, what I read through that, is an opportunity for the beauty of forgiveness to show itself. Mm-hmm. So like most people I would feel would probably not actually want you to be killed. Like, yes, the thing happened, the person is dead. Like, most people would sit back and actually not want. So I'm just trying to say, to me, it was a religion, like, rather than Christianity that tells you don't do this, and then goes and does the complete hypocritical whatever of what it's telling you. I felt it was a more open-minded and more realistic religion, one that addresses issues to the, you know, like, so a lot of us had those kind of, but then again, you find people who go and twist that and start to use it in what is it called, in when these people who use the Muslim religion to incite terrorism, what is it called? It's where you use good teachings to militarize people. There's a word for it anyway. When imams are teaching the religion and then saying that it's right to die for the.
I thought it's just.
Yeah, there's a word. No, there's a word that describes that act of doing that. It's not inciting, but it's, yeah. So anyway, like I'm saying, you know, like now you use that, you take a beautiful religion like Islam and then turn it on its head and start using it in that way. So it's like, it breaks down to people. It breaks down to people and this urge to use good things for power seeking and like evil deeds, you know, is what I feel anyway.
Have you met what you would say, in your opinion, open-minded artists, but who are also heavily religious?
Yeah, funnily enough, it's always a very interesting conversation. The thing is with being human is, I think we just like factions. I think humans just like factions. I don't know why. So, like, if you're in the art world and you're religious, you're already having a hard time. You're one of the 1%ers. You're like, what is it called? You're a speck of salt in the ocean. Like, literally, because there are not so many people who would be proud of this, the fact that they are practicing within the boundaries of these institutions. You know, you feel like these things limit you. If you're a Muslim, I already know you can't depict a face, for instance, that supposedly goes against religion to figuratively depict faces and stuff like that.
When your deer are really super religious, because they are.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying, I know a lot of Muslim artists who would not want to be. They are really Muslim, but they don't want to be open about it because they don't want to be questioned about the fact that they've created in that vein. They've created things that. So, I mean, I know a lot of people. There's this one guy. The exhibition we had, if not now, he's an artist named Andrew, and Andrew is an artist I respect. I love his work, and his conversation is always religious, right? And the reason I respect his work and like what he's doing with his work is because there was a time, actually maybe like a few months, when I was very strongly using the Bible or using scripture as a source for artwork, right? So I would take scripture and turn it on its head. Again, an influence from my interest in the way that Western artists from the past had created, I found it very very exciting. The fact that artists back then, because of the way that work was commissioned, for give you the task of creating a work of art, and because you had to make this commission work, but you didn't want to sit in the constraints of the church, you would make a work that tricked people. Those of us who can see beyond the work could see the funny connotations that you were trying to show, but the church saw what it was that they wanted to see. So I liked that. I liked that subversion. So I was trying to use scripture. Like I would take like Acts 3:11, which is like a very short verse that just speaks about turning around from sin. Then I would play on that concept and make a painting that instead looks very dirty or something, but is still trying to say the same thing. So Andrew's work is that. Andrew takes concepts that I know he pulls from scripture and then tries to, or rather applies them to contemporary life and contemporary struggle. Is exactly what he goes for, like the struggle of, for instance, having to grow up in a city like Nairobi. You understand? Yeah. So I respect artists who are working in that space. I think is what I would say about that. There is value to every kind of work. So whatever your conversation, I respect that. But personally, I'm not anymore an artist who would work along those lines.
In the lost files of the first interview that we had, you had mentioned about you had talked about advocacy in your work and what matters.
Right. Well, I'd mentioned that I advocate. Locally, I do a lot of grassroots advocacy. In tackling topics like extrajudicial killing, impunity, low-level corruption, disappearances, just topics like these that affect what I feel are the real people on the ground. I advocate around centers like the Kibera and Mathare Social Justice Center, with the Social Justice Center's working group. So this what this does is it opens up a forum with real people. That's what I really like about working in spaces like this. That means you get to talk to that person's mother, you get to talk to that person themselves who was assaulted, you get to talk to just real people who are going through real things on the ground. Yeah. Also because that is the kind of thing that makes up the subject matter of most of my production, the work that I make. Like I'd mentioned in the previous podcast, that for me, I value very strongly the work that I do around advocacy and the real work that I do. And I feel like the product is just the artwork. What you people would receive as the artwork is just the end result of a long line of either questioning or a long line of research or a long line of looking into something. Is that is the end result of all that. So an artwork is a long story. It's not just a product. Besides that, I don't know what else I'd say about advocacy unless you can prompt me. It's just my space.
Yeah, I can't remember now, but it was along the lines.
Oh.
Yeah, I think you had talked a little bit more about what physically happens to you when you do these things.
Oh.
Yeah, what are the inevitable downsides to doing what you do?
I mean, I wouldn't call it a downside as such, but it's let's say it's part and parcel of doing what you have to do. So, and I think I take much less of I don't want to sensationalize it. I take a lot less of the brand than the people who actually do this for as a life's calling. The real social justice workers, the real advocacy. These are people who I respect very much. And they're guys who their whole lives are dedicated to exposing the truth, to taking care of the masses for next to no compensation. But I have definitely been through very, very many funny, hairy situations in the pursuit of making work and in the pursuit of what we could loosely call collecting evidence. Yeah. Sometimes what advocacy work concerns is just literally collecting evidence is a wide term, but collecting information, let's call it that can aid towards ending some of these things that happen, because a lot of it is about talking, bringing it up rather. So there are many bodies that are here to protect us, but they don't know what is going on. So when myself or other people can show a video or an image or a recording or whatever it is of a reality happening or taking place, that I saw this impunity taking place, that makes a big bound and makes a big difference in changing the situation. For trying to collect a lot of these things, I tried to take photography in town and I ended up, oh my God, so many times getting arrested. That one is common. There are times when I've been in places where I knew something was going to happen. For instance, maybe I knew because of informants, that the police, Nairobi town is not exactly a humongous town. It's a kind of like the space you can literally walk through maybe in the span of an afternoon, which makes it a very small space, So when things are happening in Nairobi town, with the right information, it's very easy to track down where a certain activity is happening. If the police intend to raid, for instance, the city council intend to raid, there are various bases where these people who sell things on the streets, they have to hide when the city council show up. So there are various bases they have around the city where they hide, which are places that are known to some of us. So when we know that there's about to be a raid, you alert said people so that they can save if you are caught, they take your goods away and then you also get arrested. So at the very least, most of these people prefer to be arrested, but at least have your wares safe somewhere to be collected. And so there was a time I got caught in the middle of trying to help these people coordinate the movement of stuff from one of these bases to another base. So I was also, because of my outlook and what I look like, they were sure I was one of these people. So, it's many different reasons you end up getting caught in the line of trying to do this kind of work. But for me, it's very important because I feel it's what defines a strong word, but one of the pillars of my creative pursuit is doing this kind of thing.
And what ends the arrest? I mean, what is it? Bail? Is it warning? Is it...
What happened? It's funny at this point. So there's a police station in town. That's Central Police Station. And I'm not certain I had your question, but I'm just going to freestyle with this. Most of the times now, I'm so well known at that police station that I just go, I greet those people, they put me in, they do the usual booking, we laugh about it, and then I leave. It's like I've become so common there. But to points where, you just hope to be released. They don't want to listen to, they're not having it. But it's never dead. It's never dead, so yeah. We're still here to do it another day.
and none of that has never worried those people that help you or your family. What has their take been on it?
My family? Mm-hmm. Well, the truth is, my family, my mother probably doesn't know my work gets this extreme. And I wouldn't want her to know, I think.
So is this off record then?
Sorry?
Is this off record? Or you can say
no, this can be on the record, but I doubt you'll hear it.
Okay. All right.
No, I wouldn't want to share the reality of the situation with her because simply I just don't need her to panic, because her panic then becomes a burden on me and then makes work difficult to do. The members of my family family that are aware are like my cousins, some of my uncles, just in case something ever happened, people would know exactly what it was I was doing. But no, I don't see. And even then, and that said, people will always warn you and give you words of like, take care of yourself and that kind of thing. But no one has tried to stop me or tell me that I need to stop doing this because it might harm me, that kind of a thing. And I'm well aware I'm an adult. I'm well aware of like how realistic the situation can get. And so like I know how to take care of myself. There are many measures I've had to take in the years leading to now. You don't just jump into advocacy. It's really something that I started, I think, the right way. You start by going through learning through people who've done it before. So I was there with members of these advocacy groups who are pretty prominent right now. So it's like, I think aware that shit can get real. And like that one day these guys can come and, land on you. So it's something that I walk around and think about every day, even as I practice. It's just a mad reality. It's a mad reality. It's a thing that I definitely constantly think about. The reality of having, of maintaining a family life in this sort of, it's just crazy. I watched a documentary on Boniface Mwangi's life the other day, centered around his family life and what it means for his young children growing up, knowing lifestyle, knowing the kind of life he lives, the fact that him and his family receive death threats like on a common basis. I'm just like, dude, I don't think that's something that I have the guts to put someone through, and definitely not children. So I don't know, man. And the thing again is, once you start, it's not easy to stop. You know what I mean? Like, once you start having this sort of conversations, you feel, or I feel, very guilty pulling away, or maybe not having this sort of conversation anymore. So I don't know. I don't know. It's crazy.
You don't know how it's going to end. Maybe or when it's going to end.
What do you call the end? It's like as if we're saying that by tomorrow, or like at some given point that we're calling the end, people are suddenly going to be good to one another. Policies are going to be changed such that they take care of the masses. It's like some of these things will never come to fruition. So you can't even start to think of an actual end to advocacy. You know what I mean? There's always going to be someone fucking someone else up, and someone has to stand up for those little someones. I mean, what I would like to know, have you ever felt like advocating against things? Are there things that bother you so much so that you can't have a conversation without
addressing them?
You can't. When I say have a conversation, I'm talking about even like your form of creative work. You can't really just create work without this sort of things passing through your mind. Do you agitate about anything?
Yeah, I do. One of the biggest one for me is the things that I see in like the domestic culture that we have.
Yeah.
Leaving religion, leaving all these other things that kind of build that up. Just the lack of self-belief and
having a strongly feminist conversation. Basically, you're trying to talk about how, if I'm not wrong, it's more so that females are getting stunted in the society, or like in a sleep-like state, but you're talking more towards the feminist aspect of your conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't try to give it like this name. I just hate it when it happens. So I try to talk about it in my writing, or address it just by doing things. I think that's my biggest one. It really breaks my heart, and I don't know why that has such a strong hold on me, but it does. It's one of the main ones.
Because like I was trying to say with myself, it's not just something you jump into. You have to be very much informed, because also nothing gets done the right way when it's not done in some form of order. You're just making noise if you're not doing things with some sort of order to it. So it's not just like, I'm going to start advocating for the LGBTQ community, and you're going to have so much downpour on yourself. So I think it's what you say is a very, very valid things. I would just like to say they're very valid. They're very valid things. They're things to be aware of when you want to practice. It's not a must that there are multiple ways to advocate that don't require active agitation, like that you are out in the public doing things. There are many ways that you can do it, even just collecting information for those who actually go out to do the creative work is enough. So like the way you were taking photos the other day is playing your part in one way or the other. I would like to insist to put it out like on record that like I don't hold anyone against actively getting into this space, Some people might feel the urge, but like I don't actively hold against artists or creatives or whatever. Even though a point I was going to make is that I strongly sit in with are you a fan of Nina Simone?
For sure.
Yeah, so I mean I'm a strong believer and I love the belief that this woman had about what it means to be the artist and what it means to be the creative. So that is what fuels me a lot of the time when I do some of this advocacy work, is that idea that you are a vessel of the times, you are someone who is documenting your day to day, and also you have a voice that can maybe change your day to day scenarios. So it's a very strong thing to hold on to, but I think people need to take care of themselves and play it safe before you decide to do some of these things.
And also, I think I tried to tackle or to be an advocate or to lead this way personally first in my surrounding, in my immediate surrounding,
right.
To see if I can really conquer that, because I'm still. I'm continuously finding out what it is that I am comfortable and not comfortable doing, or I'm able to and not able to do. If I can't hold eye contact with someone, like a member of the family, because I feel like, I have a huge problem with eye contact.
What?
I do.
How do you tackle that? Even with your family?
No, less with my family, but there are people that I'm familiar with that I still can't have straight eye contact with. So things like that. Like if I can't do that, I just feel like there's some things that I need to take care of first in my immediate surrounding. And I think this is also why I gravitate towards writing personal stories or talking about things that I have had experience with firsthand. I wouldn't want to start writing. I'm not in a space where I can address other people's dealings with the world, because I just feel like there's such a huge chunk of that I need to get out from myself, just from my surrounding and from my everyday life. Things that I want to, I guess, solve in the world or in my community, I get to then tackle personally.
Interesting. Thank God.
Is the hustle worth it? Are there times you wish you had a regular income or stable life?
Oh yeah, right. Actually, it's funny. Actually, I think I answered this question the wrong way the first time we had this conversation.
Really?
But I know it's funnily enough. I know I say it, I feel like it's worth it, and for me, it's about what is worth it to you. I think that was what I said last time. It really is what are you claiming worth is to you, for you to start basing that off. And for me, the life and the practice has fulfilled my boxes of what worth means to me, right? So to answer the question as a Jakarta, definitely it's all been worth it. Is it difficult? It's very difficult. The process alone of living or surviving in a city like Nairobi makes it already that it's not an easy thing to do, to be a self-employed, then on top of that to be a creative in the visual arts field especially. But through many years of existing in this space, and being smart, you've managed to make certain opportunities work in my favor that provide some form of a constant income to survive on. It's also another important thing is what do you call it, like your lifestyle. What sort of lifestyle are you living? Are you comfortable in the sort of lifestyle that you can sustain? And I'm personally comfortable in the lifestyle that that I currently live in and can sustain. But then I was going to say, I didn't mention this the last time we spoke, is that unfortunately this year has started and messed up for a lot of people the plans they had for the year. But one of the things that happened early in the year, I got a position as a lecturer at a university named Al Jamea in Karen, and I was going to be the university's arts administrator as well as an arts tutor. Wow. And my position should have started in April, but now has been moved to most likely June, and that is only if the lockdown is lifted and some things go back to normal and the board of the school determine that they still want. There's just so many conversations around that, but I'm just trying to say that would have been, let's say, my first formal employment in the sense of a job, like an 8 to 5 sort of a job, which is, I find very funny because I'd always somewhat promised myself that I wouldn't ever get employed. But I think it's a fair compromise because I'm going to be teaching art, so like that's how I forgive myself. Yeah. So yeah, to answer the question, I'm sure that having that sort of an employment in that sort of a space will make me very, very comfortable. Because like I've said, I'm already comfortable. So to get that on top of my practice would be making my life a lot more comfortable. But even without having had a formal job, I was very much sustaining something of a comfortable living, doing what I do, and I can say it's definitely been worth it through the years that I've been practicing.
And by what standards do you think you judge yourself in your work?
Like reward that question, like ask me that in a different way.
Because you had answered it in the previous podcast, I think.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember. What did I say? Oh my goodness, and it was such a good answer.
I know!
The thing is, honestly, I can't answer that question now. It's like the other answer is literally blocking me from being honest.
What are you still struggling with personally that if it wasn't there, you would move faster and farther?
So many things. If I was getting very, very personal with you, I'd probably start including all my health issues. But I'll leave those ones to myself.
I understand.
I think my main one is anxiety. Like with most of us as creatives, it's that anxiety that you live with is a barrier that I've had for many years, and I'm glad is now somewhat becoming a companion. Like rather than being seen as an Achilles heel, is becoming a lot more of something that I'm accepting as a companion, a life companion, because I don't think the anxiety of the works that we create will ever leave. But I'm so sure that if I didn't have that anxiety, I would have a tremendous body of work, because I would have no limitations around, no inhibitions, rather is the word, around things that I make. I would just make and not care. But besides that, I don't think there's anything I can say that is so critical in that sense that is limiting me. It's not fair to say things like finance and matters like that, I think, because there is always a way around something like that, you know? There's always a way around getting, maybe if it was finance for a project. So it would be too simple a thing to say that it hinders my practice. The strongest thing that hinders myself from moving forward is literally myself.
Sour philosopher.
That, man.
No, that's good. That was a beautiful answer. I suffer from, I don't know if I suffer from it, but it's a constant thing that also holds me back. Anxiety. You've put it very professionally. I just used to sort of call it overreacting and being stupid. But
exactly what it is.
Yeah, I also overthink a lot. You had mentioned that imposter syndrome. Is it imposter syndrome?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the word.
Exactly.
That feeling.
You don't feel like you belong. You feel like, there are people better than you and that you're not really supposed to be there.
Some ideas, like you're not the one who's coming up with all these awesome things that you're creating, when in actuality it really is you. So it's a funny thing that we all go.
How do you deal with your anxiety?
Oh man, by kicking myself in the ass and telling myself that if I don't do it, who else is going to do it?
Yeah.
You have to. I deal with it by fighting it head on. Yeah. And funnily enough, anxiety wins a lot of the time. Sometimes I feel like I almost want to call it destiny, because there are days when anxiety makes me not do something and do something else instead. And the something else instead, for instance, achieve some form of success. Then I start questioning, well, was that the way it was supposed to be? Like, had I put version number 1, how do I not know that it would have achieved maybe the same result? You get what I'm trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it has sometimes, my anxiety has sometimes determined the right path for me. Until this point, that's why I call it a companion. It's just something I roll with. Like, if it's pushing me too much towards, don't do this, I sometimes accept. But then there are many a day when I just tell myself, you're being, get out of your head and just do what it is you have to do.
What was the worst anxious period in your work?
No, you didn't ask me that question last time. Actually, there are so many. It's not just one. The closest I can remember is November of last year, having to work towards my group show at the Alliance Française. It was somewhat like a solo show for me, based off of the amount of work I had to create and the space and everything and the vibe around the exhibition. I was working on another project with the Goethe Institute at the time, and that project had been running for a couple of months, and it was literally something we were working on every day. So I had limited time, I was very stressed, and then I felt like I would, besides challenging whether what I am creating makes any sense, I was also challenging whether I would even be able to bring the work to completion there were just so many things. And so for me, that was the most anxious period ever. I literally got to the point where I was calling my mother to break down every evening. Like, it was scheduled. I just knew that at 7:30 I would call her, cry for an hour, and then go back to work.
That's so sweet, but that's like nice.
Sorry?
That's sweet that you cried to mama.
Terrible. It was so bad. No, I mean, like, I don't even want to exaggerate. It was a bad time. I felt like quitting. Mm-hmm. So I knew, I think, look, in hindsight, it was very defining, very important, because it was one of those times that really showed me what it means to be an artist. It showed me that it's work. It really is a lot of hard work. It breaks down to the hard work, you know. What I was doing in relativity is very small scale. You look at the kind of international exhibitions some people get, and you look like at a space like the size of the MoMA, and you're told to fill it with work. When I look at what I did, it doesn't even come close to comparison. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, so now, are you now going to break down because you've been given the MoMA to create work under a tight scale? So it's like, it just riles me up to understand, this is practice for the bigger things that might be coming, like the more hardcore things. But it was a terrible time. Living within it, I was so anxious. I was in such a bad space. And that is one of many times the same kind of thing has happened. That is, I get a commission from a client, and I feel very deeply about that work. Or maybe I convinced them very strongly that I could do it. Mm-hmm. And the time to give the client the work comes across, and I'm getting more and more anxious. I'm not sure I've done the right thing. The funniest situations with me, the days that I get like work from people. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's an oil painting. I really love oil painting. It's how I began. Oil painting was my first form of art. That was my first product. So I have a very soft spot for oil painting. The people give me oil painting portrait commissions that I do. And then after doing the thing, people don't really understand the attachment that some of us have to our work. I only sell my work because I need to live. Like, I only sell my work because, or rather let my work leave my presence because I need it to sustain me. But if I could hold on to everything I create, I would definitely, that's what some of like our work means to some of us. There are days I do work for people, and like I really, really like what I've made. So I have to lie to the person that it's like it got lost or it got spoiled so that I can keep it.
That's on record, So.
Oh my God, by the way, off record.
Really?
No,
come on, let's just put that in there.
No, you can have it. No, you can have it. You can have it. Like, but I'm just saying, I get very anxious. I get anxious like that about where is this thing going to go? I'm never going to see it again. And sometimes there's this feeling I used to get a long time ago that was like every time I create is like draining a creation bar. Like there's a 100% creation bar inside me, and every time I bring something out, the bar loses points and becomes like 90, then 80. So as I let these things go, I'm letting them go forever, and I'm letting that the ability to create to that level go. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So you feel like you want to hold on to the things that you love because like I'll never see you, I'll never do it like this again, I'll never make it like this again. So I mean, a lot of these silly anxiety attacks come, and sometimes they mess up your practice. Like when I started being managed, when I got my manager earlier this year, I had one of those incidences of a piece that I really wanted to keep. And my manager freaked out. They're like, "You can't live like this. You can't be making things and then like falling in love with them and then being unable to give them to the owners." So but it's something we just like have to figure out how to, as a creative, as a person, you have to figure out how to deal with your anxiety. Otherwise, it can really stunt your life. It can mess you up.
I think on that note, we should end because we have spoken longer than what we're putting up here. This is just part 1. So this is the end of part 1. I want people to hear part 2 and the rest of the conversations that we'll be having. I just want to thank you again for saying yes to being on the podcast. I'm looking forward to seeing how this turns out, but I for sure enjoyed it very much.
Thank you. I've enjoyed my, I don't know, like I can say I've enjoyed my time. I've enjoyed the very many podcasts that we've been having. Like we had one session, and the truth is we've had multiple sessions.
It's true.
We've made our multiple sessions.
Yeah.
Yes, it's been very awesome, and I hope your podcast goes on to grow. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing the rest of your guests.
Me too. Okay, we're done.